The first thing you might notice on this screen when I log in as a student is that I now have to choose the subject or the experience that I want to have in Classworks before I select the actual feature that I want to interact with. So here on this screen, I've got access to go into reading, mathematics, science, my wellness, and my smart tracker. We'll go into each of those in a little bit, but we're going to start with mathematics. You notice that there's a blinking star here. Wherever you see the blinking star, where the student sees that, that means there is an action that they can take within that selection. So Grace has got some mathematics things to complete here. So now Grace has access to multiple things while she's in mathematics. She also has this toolbar on the side here where she can get back over to reading if she wants to, as well as those other things that we talked about there on that login screen. But we're going to start with my screener. And you'll notice that Grace is now able to track her growth throughout the year. She can see each administration and how she scored. She can also go deeper into the results and view her results by domain. So all of that information that the teacher has, the student now has to be able to track their own progress and really take ownership of their learning. Grace is also able to take her test here, as well as seeing how many attempts she has. You get 5 attempts to take the screener in Classworks. The next thing you see here is my progress check. Grace has a star here because she actually has a probe available that she needs to take this week. So we really are trying to guide the students, but then of course the teacher always can let the student know where they really want the student to be in the program. Grace can also see her last score on her probe here. Again, trying to really surface all of the students' data to them so they understand what they're doing in the program. When she goes in here, you can see now Grace has access to the same graph that the teacher has on her side. So Grace can see how she's performing, all her plotted points here on the graph, as well as a very easy way to see how she's performed for each of these administrations. And then this blinking star saying you've got a probe to take here for week 12. So we've been getting really good feedback from teachers about this. We know that a lot of teachers were actually printing this and reviewing this with their students already. So this is great to have this surface to the student. And we really want to make sure the student understands how important it is to do their best on these assessments that are tracking their progress. Grace can also just start her weekly check here. Again, you see the star prompting her where to go. The next thing we will look at is Grace's learning path. So this is where Grace is going to work on her individualized instruction, whether that's her specially designed instruction or for interventions. And here you see monthly scores available. So the stars represent Grace's average achievement on her activities. The bar represents how much time Grace is interacting with the interventions. We always encourage 30 minutes per week per subject, because that is typically where we can see that year's worth of growth. So you can see we're tracking that 120 minutes there. And then you can click on each thing so that Grace can actually see what she's doing. And so here in December, Grace had great scores on the activities. She didn't spend a ton of time in Classworks, but she does have an exceptional scores certificate that she's able to access here. The teacher also has this same monthly scores available on their side of the program so that they can see how the student's doing, as well as print certificates. So for example, in June, Grace spent a good amount of time in the program. She didn't do so well with scores, but she's got an exceptional time on task certificate here. All of that is surfaced to the teacher. This does replace the old badges and shields incentive program that we have. The next thing on this screen are that there are 2 learning paths here. So that's very different from how it used to be. So if you have assigned progress monitoring to your student for a specific skill domain, Classworks is automatically going to filter a learning path for the student with the skills related to that domain that you've assigned. So in this case, Grace has been assigned progress monitoring in the domain of algebra. And so she has a learning path available to her that is specifically to work on those skills. It would be up to the teacher to make sure that Grace knows where she's supposed to be working. The star is always going to go to the progress monitoring specific learning path if that has activities available to work on. Once she completes that learning path, then she can go right back into working on her overall learning path. But she can click in either one. So it is important that the teacher let the student know, do you want them to potentially work on their overall learning path, or do you want them working on maybe those focus skills for their IEP goal, for example? Both of these work the same. So I'm just going to click in here to show you what it looks like when she's in her learning path. One thing you'll notice is that she is able to see all of the units of instruction that she has available to her in the learning path. However, these are locked. So we still want the student working up that evidence-based learning progression, but we are giving them insight into what they have coming and how they performed on the previous assignments. If they click in to work on instruction, even if they've already completed the mini lesson before, they now always have this mini lesson available to them that they can access to review before they potentially work on additional activities. They also have Whitley available, as we just talked about before. And the other thing that's brand new is this redo button. So previously, if a student did not hit the mastery that we were looking for, the teacher would need to reassign that activity to the student. But now Classworks is going to give that student one more attempt to work in that activity themselves if they want to. So we highly recommend when you're coaching students on how to work in their learning paths, if they are going to redo an activity, it might be a good time to review the mini lesson again, because they always have that available, or maybe engage Whitley for some additional help before they redo their activity. The final score that they get on that second attempt is the logged score, regardless of whether that's higher or lower than the previous score. All right. Back to the main mathematics screen here. The last section on this screen is My Teacher Assigned. So in My Teacher Assigned, that's going to be wherever a teacher may have assigned either a custom assessment or any custom instruction. So maybe those classroom math or reading activities we talked about, or potentially you've searched and assigned by standard some additional separate instruction. This is where the student would go to work on that instruction. Those units of instruction work exactly the same way. They're able to see, what's ahead of them, but they cannot just click around. The star is going to tell them the next activity they have to work on. So very similar to the others. And then let's just quickly go through some of the other sections that the student has available. So the student can see science here. They will only have science instruction if the teacher has actually assigned science instruction to them. So otherwise, there would be no need for them to go into science. My Wellness is where they will find the SE Skills Survey. This is turned on at a district level. So if your district has opted out from using the survey, then the student would not need to interact there. And then they also have My Observations, which the teachers have on their side to do maybe PBIS tracking. Any observations that the teachers do track, the students are able to see here on their side.